What is it going to take to convince you that you're good enough? You don't have to seek the approval of society that does not respect you, doesn't protect you, and doesn't provide for you. What if I told you I had the keys to your immediate liberation and you no longer have to fight? Welcome to the Birthright Project. I'm your host, Kareem Grimes. The Birthright Project is a gift to our young black men. We'll be putting back what has been taken by encouraging, teaching, and guiding our future leaders. The term birthright represents an inheritance that is a human right that belongs to you at birth. Therefore, this is not a protest. Our focus is doing the work in our own communities, identifying community and rebuilding. That means it all starts with you. Today, we start from the beginning. Let's work on our community. My name is Kareem Grimes. I'm an actor, born and raised in Los Angeles, California. Well, actually born and raised in Inglewood, California, but I do live in Los Angeles. Went to Dorsey High School, also attended Cal State LA. I would call myself a health nut in a way, but also I love giving back to my community. So I definitely want to introduce my distinguished guest with me today. To my right, I have Tyrone Hampton, Pasadena City Council member. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Born and raised here in Pasadena. Went to high school in Pasadena, elementary school, all public schools. Family-owned business here in town for over 45 years. So just happy to be able to serve my community in multiple different ways. I was previously a school board member and then won an election to be city council member about a year and a half ago. And so just happy to be here in fifth generation Pasadena. My daughter would be sixth generation Pasadenian, and just happy to be here today. So thank you.
To my left, I have this good brother here, Mr. Pedro Belugo, who's a tattoo artist as well as a designer.
Hi, Pedro Belugo. I was born in Chicago, raised in Los Angeles. I'm a tattoo artist by trade, but I'm a technically trained fine art painter, and basically I use my art as a tool to reach the minds of the people.
I have Mr. Eric Bailey, who is a all-around musician. I had to get that in there.
Oh, thanks for that warm welcome.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I've been a musician for over 20 years. I played bass, keyboards, percussions. I used to play saxophone back in junior high school. I'm a father, I'm a husband. I grew up in the streets of Oakland, California, moved down here with family, started a new career, and I'm just here to discuss what's happening in our community.
To my far left, I have Mr. Reverend Brandon Fisher. How you doing this evening, sir?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Thank you. Reverend Brandon Fisher. I pastor First AME Zion Church here in Pasadena. Grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina. Went to North Carolina Central University School of Law. Saw a need to have black male representation in the legal system. After graduating, passed the bar in North Carolina, and moved out here to pastor this church. So I'm glad to be here tonight.
I'm Askia Mawakil, holistic practitioner, fifth generation. Besides holistic medicine, which I'm very involved in, I'm the great nephew of Alonzo Kennebrew, who is Booker T. Washington and George Washington Carver's herbalist and MD from Tuskegee, Alabama. Besides that, my other forte is African history. So I do a series called Live Long and Prosper. Just like you have a tree, you have many branches. And one branch is not better than the other, they're just part of the tree. And what we have to understand is that someone might have another perspective than you. It's like having a puzzle. A lot of times we come together and say, this is the puzzle. No, you got a piece of the puzzle. And once we understand that if we put all pieces of the puzzle, then we come to some type of unification and draw a picture of what we need to do as a people in this particular country here and throughout the world. But we only have a piece. And we see, this is where ego gets in the way. I have the answer. Everybody has an answer, but ain't nothing moves. I mean, where's the answer? You got the answer. Why are we still in the condition that we have? So you don't have the answer. You have a piece of the puzzle. Our enemies come after us, or the society comes at us in many different ways, through education, through our relationships, through finance, through every component. They come after us in every type of way, in our relationship with each other, with our children. So we have to understand, if your enemy is coming after you, well, you don't just have one wall at one front and he's coming through the other side. We have to look at all these ideas, all these different concepts, come together and come up with a solution.
Where is there a black community? Where does it actually exist?
Where is the black men's at? As a pastor, you should know this. Do they come to church?
I see about 100, 120 people a Sunday, and less than 10%, so 10 to 12 are men. They are a missing component from my church specifically, and my church is mainly African American. And most times you'll see the mothers bringing the young male children to church. And that is a missing piece in our black churches.
I think we need to start there.
It seems to me like a lot of, based on what you're saying, a lot of young black men, well, single mothers are actually, the church or the pastor has become basically a surrogate father, or a father symbol for these young men. And somewhere down during the translation of it all, we're losing them, and doesn't necessarily mean that churches are the end all be all for young black men to get what they need, but it's traditionally been a major, stronghold in the quote unquote black community.
I agree with you, Pedro. I think the church was in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. It was one of the pillars of the community.
Yeah.
And it was a place where African American, both male and female, went to be developed. And, within the church, it is that some of my men that are fathers in the church are incarcerated. And so, of course, they won't be able to participate. And then there's some that just don't see the importance of developing their children, in that specific way. So that is a challenge for us.
Going to different school sites and speaking with parents on a regular, I always spoke with a lot of the mothers, right? And it's not that the men didn't want to be in the picture, but a lot of them actually were either working or they may been incarcerated, like Pastor said earlier. I think that there's a more of a systemic issue with something that's bigger than something that we're going to fix today, right?
Definitely.
But what we can do is encourage, and I think that's part of it right now. I always hear a lot of African Americans, some of our elders in the community, some are very encouraging, and then there are some that, even when I campaign, which is, I think is an interesting place I could put it. I'm a young African American male, and I'm a father, husband, and you would think that, not saying that I'm the prime example of a black family or but I am a good example of just family in general. Or I would say that my wife is working, I'm working, and the teardown of me during my campaign and how negative it was, it reminded me that, just campaigning itself is exactly what our African American men are going through on a day-to-day. Not just the campaign, but from from each other, the tear down from the woman, the tear down from our community. I mean, what you see on TV, you see African American men dressing up as women. I mean, I mean, that's the
Emasculation.
Exactly, the emasculation of the African American man. And if you think about it through history, right, and even still to this day, I have a lot of respect for women. I have all sisters, but in any race, any creature, the man is the strength of the community.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to do that to the African American male, I think that's a bigger topic, but I think that's something that we here at this table and preaching it forward, passing it forward from here on out. I think that's something that we could actually change.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to chime in because speaking to you guys earlier when we were talking in the green room, as far as I remember my community that I grew up in, being in the Lamar Park area, where we had, I had Audubon Junior High School for summer school and after school programs, and then I had Marla Gibbs with the Vision Theater and acting, and then just my neighbors, looking after me. So if anything happened or if I got out of line, there was discipline, and I think that is missing today. And then like you guys say, and then also too, I remember, my dad just didn't go to church. My mom took me, but my dad was like, I'm too tired. I'm not going to church. Y'all go. So in some cases that happens as well. But I think going on what you said, Pedro, as far as, like you said, do we even have a community? And what does it look like?
Yeah. Where is it?
Yeah.
A big part of that, trying to deal with the solutions, I think a big part of that is we need to find peace, and not the stereotypical, hippie style peace. I'm talking about I'm talking about real peace. I like to use the acronym for peace as proper education always corrects errors, and this is a big problem in the community, and not just Black community, but in this country as a whole. We lack proper education about ourselves, proper education about others, and it's that knowing self that will give you that pride. And when you have that as your foundation, then you can move forward and reach out. But ultimately, community starts at home. We may not have a physical, geographical community, but the community, like I said, it starts at home, and then it branches out to the alikes, the people that you think alike and are alike and akin to. Then it starts to spread, and now we have, for now this day and age, we would have to have a virtual community.
I like that you said that, Pedro, that we need to properly educate ourselves. I think that one of the proclivities of our community or our African American race is that we're so busy trying to reconcile with the other and trying to be like the other that we have not properly reconciled with ourselves. Yeah. And so we're trying to attain to be something for someone else without first identifying who we are properly. And that is why we are moving away from who we are to try to be something that somebody else wants us to be for their gratification and their validation. We're not reconciling with ourselves to say, who am I really?
Right.
Absolutely. I mean, I definitely believe, knowing your past shapes your future, and you hit it right on the nose. Having knowledge of self and education of yourself, but also having education of others, because you're not ignorant.
You have to know others.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm not a pastor, but I do know some of the word, and I know in the book it does explain that you should know your brothers and sisters of other nations. Right. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to mix with them, you have to become them, you have to inherit their ways or customs, but you should know them. How can you live with people that you don't know? We all live on this planet, and if we don't, we have to know each other. We have to.
But I think you're right. I mean, it starts with knowing. I mean, it really does start with knowing yourself and knowing your self-worth and knowing how great of a community and great of a people you are. I mean, when I think of African Americans, and I'm not just saying this because I am one, I think of us as some of the most accepting people in the
Oh yeah.
I mean, we've been very accepting. We've even tried to assimilate a lot of the times to fit a mold that actually the mold didn't want us to fit in.
Right.
And so I think what I've seen on TV now, and what I've been seeing from some of the younger generations right now, I'm seeing that we need to get back to trying to figure out ourselves.
That's right.
And figure out what our self-worth is, and realize. I mean, you're realizing every culture is black culture.
Absolutely.
I mean, you think about it you think about anything you watch on TV. Everyone is trying to mimic what we are, and we're not trying to be who we are.
Yes.
And so I think what the younger generation is doing is actually kind of remembering, you know what, this is what we are, this is where we came from, and what I'm seeing from the newer generation and the younger generation, those that are, I'm part of, I'm seeing that the division between blacks is not there. Like, if I don't like what Pastor's saying, I'm not going to tell Pastor that on national TV. Right. I'm going to go talk to him behind closed doors,
like a
and
man.
say,
That's right.
and say, hey, I don't like what you're saying. Right. We've been for such a long time. I assume there were only a few positions, right, for African Americans to strive to. And once one got to that pinnacle, that position, they were kind of the only one there, and of course they were being looked at, and so they didn't really want to help another one of us come up to that position.
Right. It's interesting that you, and I think the consensus is definitely knowledge of self, educating yourself, and also knowing other cultures and having respect for other cultures that can begin to help us as far as we say, get this community together. Like you said, community starts within the home.
Definitely. I mean, a big, that's the main thing. Another thing. Back to, and I'm glad you're here because I can reference, the word and the father who is missing from the home in most situations in our community was considered the priest of the household. Now the fathers are not going to church, and this has been going on for several generations. It's not just now. My father wouldn't go to church. When the priest of the house is not keeping the covenant, how can you expect the parishioners to prosper? How can you expect the family to prosper when the men are, if they're present, they're not being spiritual men. They're not planting the necessary seeds in their children to reinforce positive values and knowing their self-worth. These are things that when you get that from your father, the priest of your home or your house, that makes you feel invincible. If you know your father told you, man, you can go out there and you can conquer this world. You can do this.
We need to take charge. We need to teach our sons to become men. And to love their women's and to treat them as queens like they should be treated. And with the men's that we have left, we can forget about the ones that's locked up because that's a lost cause right there. But the ones that's left, we need to, tell them, get your sons, teach their friends, who don't have dads, and become a community again.
Absolutely.
I love taking care of my mom. It wasn't easy at first. She learned how to better communicate her needs.
And you learned how to not ignore yours.
I discovered how to make healthier meals.
And I discovered how much I enjoyed them.
Becoming a caregiver is a learning experience for everyone. Find articles, tips, and tools from experts and others who have been in your place. The Caregiving Resource Center at aarp.org/caregiving.
There's two organizations that I've always had respect for. Is the PLO, Palestine Liberation Organization, and the African National Congress in South Africa. What they were able to do to formulate was they took every aspect of their communities and formed a Congress and a parliament with all different eyes, civil leaders, radicals, unions, all come together under the umbrella of the PLO or the ANC, and they came unified. Then they developed an opposition to the power to be. African Americans, we are still waiting on leadership instead of forming a Congress. We need a Congress. We need the NAACP to sit down with the Nation of Islam. Nation of Islam sit down with the NAACP, sit down with the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, whatever major organization that has a voice in our community. We should have a Congress at this particular time and come up with an agenda, fight and argue. But come up with an agenda as a people, what we are looking for. And until that day comes, we're looking for leadership. You know, during the last presidency with Barack Obama, you know, I hear so many comments, well, he didn't do nothing for black people. My question with that, what did black people in unification ask him to do? It's nothing worse than going to dinner with somebody that say they're hungry, and you ask them what they want to eat, and they say, I don't know. You see, we were hungry, but we never said what we wanted to eat. Because we had an attitude with Barack that he was the Lord and Savior, and we're gonna put some sandals and a robe on him, and because he met and he gave a speech at Mountain High, because Dr. King said, I've been to the mountaintop. We try to find some coalition between those things, and then we thought he was gonna walk in the office because we watched too many Shaft movies, and we thought he was gonna slap white people into shape.
Just go home.
This is what our problem was. We're looking for leadership. We are too diverse in mindsets, but we do have certain things in common. Like Malcolm said, they don't shoot him because he's a Muslim. They shoot him because he's black. They don't shoot you because you're a Christian because he's black. Your enemy doesn't have any respect what affiliation you have. He come after you in one way. So we have to come unified, draw an agenda, and stay where we are.
Now that we know what the problem is, and we talked a little bit about the solution, what are more solutions that we can be able to do as men, you know, in the community?
Well, I think the first thing is, I think it starts with education, and also it starts with telling our daughters, our young women, that, you know, that we do have good African American men out there, and like I said earlier, you know, it's a bigger issue, but I think it's the rewiring of our women as well, because our men want to feel like a man. You know, at the same time in their household, they want to feel like a man, even though that their wife, a lot of the times, African American women, I mean, this is just the true facts. There are more African American women with six-figure salaries than African American men.
Absolutely.
And that's because, I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons why it is, but I think part of the reasons is for African American women, if I'm an employer, I don't feel threatened by her. But an African American man, I feel threatened by a little bit. So I think it's rewiring some of those, but women in general have been making major strides, which is beautiful. I have all sisters and I have a daughter, so of course I want my daughter to be a multimillionaire and have a great salary. But you know, if her husband doesn't have millions of dollars, at least the brother should have a job. But right,
Some kind of,
but, you know,
some kind.
But it's just knowing that, you know, who he is, and also encouraging him to be a father.
Eric, what are you as far as solutions? What can we do?
like Mr. Hampton here, I have 2 daughters, and I would like to see them with somebody that's making a 6-figure income too, playing football or something. You know?
or blue collar.
Blue collar. You know?
I was gonna say, you know, I'll be honest. I mean, I have a daughter as well. I have a daughter and I have 2 sons. I have a 16-year-old son, and I have a 24-year-old son. Ultimately, you know, I just want my children, you know, when they do pick a mate, I want them to you pick someone who, 1, loves them, 2, has a means to provide, not for my child, but to provide for themselves. And this is a big part of the problem, because a lot of our daughters, the only option they have or choices they have are men who can't provide for themselves. We have a lot of uneducated men, and then we have a lot of men that aren't striving to reach a higher goal. And unfortunately, a lot of young women are accepting of this. You know, I often see these young men, you know, sagging and dressing the way they dress, and I cringe, because you know, this is what my daughter has to choose from. You know, but I think it starts with educating, once again, like Eric's saying, it starts with education at home. If you teach your daughter or your sons, like, this is not acceptable, this is not okay, then they're gonna seek someone that's at their level. You know, my daughter's, like I said, she's gonna be 13 next week, and she's jokingly, you know, she'll always ask, Daddy, you know, when can I date? I said, well, you know, you can date your husband. Until then, you can date me. But when you are ready to date, the young man is going to have certain criteria. He's got to meet certain criteria. He better have a wallet in his pocket with an ID. I need to know who he is, what he does. I'd also, I mean, and his parents. And I even tell her, I jokingly, but I'm very serious, I want to see a copy of his report card. You know, parents, our children are dating these people and having friends, but we don't know who they are. You know, when I was growing up, my parents knew who my friends were. They on a first name basis. You know, nowadays kids, they don't even introduce their friends to their parents. A girl has a boyfriend, the family never meets him. Boy has a girlfriend, family never meets him. You know, when I would bring someone home, my family would ask, so where did your parents go to college? Like, where did your parents go to college? I want to know about your family. You know, but we don't have that cohesive family link anymore, you know. I think, but part of the solution is educating, you know, letting our children know that certain things are not going to be acceptable. You know, we're not going to accept that low bar.
Then I'll get to you. Adding on, you said something so key as far as your daughter dating you, and that is. I think that is the key, because
definitely
that is the first man
that she's gonna know.
That she's gonna know, and that she sees. And going back to as far as our fathers missing, that's why we have this cycle right now.
Yeah.
But it is up to us to instill in these young women, you know, how valuable they are.
Exactly.
And what you need to look for in a man.
And what not to accept.
Yeah, and it may not just be talking, but it's just by example.
Exactly.
You know, how you may treat them, or how you may treat their mother, or whatever other older female that they have that they look up to.
You have to raise the standard of what you expect.
Exactly.
Because if the standard is low, you will never live above the standard of your acceptance.
We'll never raise the bar.
And so if the bar is not raised, they're going to continue the cycle of taking whatever they can get, because one of the running quotes in my church is, you know, half a loaf of bread is better than none. Well, that's not true. I don't want you to have half a man. I want you to have a whole man. You know, and you should not want to accept anything below what you are worthy of, because you're not half a woman, so why would you accept that?